Greetings and welcome back, people. It's myself, Jonathan, also known as the PC Genie. Now, of course, I'm going to be putting a sort of a historical European martial artist perspective on certain weapons and how well I think they would do in something like a hypothetical zombie apocalypse scenario. Since a lot of people who are experienced in those sorts of martial arts tend not to cover those things. They talk about how well, swords and katanas and those sorts of things would do, but they never cover common man's items, so I'll try to do that for you. But yes, let's get to the point. Obviously, in this particular episode, we're going to be looking at the axe. Now, obviously, it is quite a hefty weapon. This particular one is a 4-pound felling axe. You can get versions which are a bit lighter sometimes, and you can get heavier versions. And there are also variations like the splitting maul, which has a sort of a sledgehammer type end at one end, and it basically is a sort of a driving wedge at the other end. Now those I would definitely not recommend using. If you are going to use any sort of felling axe or something like that, go with these sorts of designs. We've got a broader head. And that leads on to my first point, which is the sort of edge contact. Now if you're using something like a sword or a machete, in fact I'll grab this mortuary sword I've got here conveniently. As you can see, this is a blunt reenactment version, but in this you've got the edge all the way along. So, of course, I've mentioned this in a lot of the other videos already, but I'll briefly go over it again. You can make mistakes. So, if I'm cutting here, that's the optimum to cause maximum slicing and chopping. But of course, if I am a bit too close and I'm cutting more around here towards the handle, that's okay, because it will still do significant injury and damage. Whereas with this, you can, start your swing, and you've really got to chop deliberately at the end, the cutting end, of course. So if you do, if you don't judge it correctly, then you're going to have a lot of problems. Which means, of course, if you're just treating it like your typical sort of bladed weapon, there's a good chance you'll often end up hitting with the handle instead of with the actual axe head if you don't get the measurement of distance and timing exactly right. But it also means that if you're trying to compensate for that, you can end up doing the opposite thing, trying to swing towards the end and actually miss entirely. So you've got to just keep sort of swinging and guessing until you've actually got the correct cut. It's bad enough already having an opponent who probably doesn't want to die, especially if they're non-zombie and a nasty human. It's bad enough that they're going to be moving around going, oh, I don't want this axe stuck in my face. Whoa, no thank you. But, on top of that, you've only got this sort of area to work with. That's a disadvantage. And to be honest, one of the things that you see in representations of martial arts and with sort of seeing what happened with historical combat, often axes were very long bladed, so you'd see what are called bearded axes and things like that, which had even longer blades still, or even the bardiche and that sort of thing, which again have broader, longer blades for the same weight, or sometimes a bit lighter, but sort of stretched out into a thinner, more meat cleaver like sort of blade that goes along the weapon more. So you've got more of a contact area with which to cut. So you can make a bit of a mistake, maybe a few inches too high, too low, still chopping them to bits. So yes, that's one disadvantage right off the bat. The fact that you have to be quite accurate when you're aiming this weapon and trying to swing at a moving target that you're fighting with and is trying to kill you. No thanks. Apart from that, this thing, you've got 4 pounds in weight. Now granted, one of the other weapons I was looking at was the crowbar, and that's about 3 pounds. So you think, well, it's not much more. It's, a third extra of course, and you can wield it two-handed. But again, the weight is at the end, so this really does require tremendous strength. If we had to act all game-like and go from Fallout's special, we've got gradings out of 10, you'd definitely need to be a good 9 or 10 to wield something like a felling axe effectively single. Because when you see things like battle axes, they were often used in formation. So and of course you'd be having people with sort of spears and shields in front of you. You'd have people around you, maybe with swords, things like that. And then your job in that situation of a long bearded axe was to sort of reach over and hack in the chinks of the armour and the gaps in the defences, while the other people at the front were sort of doing more defensive combat. That's one example of how these sorts of things were used for war. Now, of course, if you're doing this on your own and you don't have backup, then all of those tactics that you can use to effectively wield an axe are thrown out of the window. You've got to do all of the offense and the defense on your own. So again, it's not just a problem with the offense in the fact that this is really weighted towards the end and it carries you along a hell of a lot whenever you swing it, and I've basically got to be controlled by the weapon and I've got to keep the momentum going, or basically I'm opening myself up to an attack, because if I stop to recover, that's an opening. I mean, with people like, again, in historical European martial arts, you've got people who are, you know, I mean, if I took one of these, I'm constantly moving and I want to make sure that I'm able to attack and defend from whatever position I'm in. And of course, with the different stances, like window, down here, or it's called, I think it's long tail, you can make sure that any time you're able to attack and defend. Now, of course, you can try to take those types of stances with an axe. However, it's not going to do much good. What you really have to do when you're fighting with one of these is you basically have to keep the momentum going, so then wherever you are, basically you can use the weight and momentum of the axe to do all the fighting. As you can probably tell by my voice, it is very tiring. So if you're fighting and it's not exactly going very well and you want to make sure you don't die, then of course you're going to be doing this defensively and trying to bat away any incoming weapons from survivors, or trying to stave off the zombies for a very long time. And of course that in the end is going to make for a very tiring event. That's the sort of exercise I like to do. So again, a bit similar to the crowbar. It's a great training tool, you know, if you want to get used to using things like two-handed swords and build up your stamina, great. But if you want to actually fight with these, not a good idea. So yes, in summary, I would strongly recommend that you go for a different weapon than a felling axe. In fact, this might maybe take you back a bit, but if you do have something like this and you're caught against something like a zombie, I'd recommend literally, sort of taking it overhead and throwing it at them. So you've got a projectile weapon, which this can maybe do. Granted, the way it'll be here, so it'll be doing a lot of this. So it'll be very difficult to make the head contact without the handle slapping them first. Worth a shot though. But then, unarmed, at least you've got both your hands, so if a zombie does something that tries to go, bite you, you can at least go, no you don't. Or, you can go, oh, no, off away. You can make sure to do things like, grapple, throws, disarms, takedowns, all those types of things I could see in unarmed martial arts, the dedicatable ones. You can actually do that. So, in its own weird sense, I'd actually say this is a sort of the opposite of a weapon. If you're wielding it on its own and you're not strong enough to, and have enough stamina to wield it quickly and for a long time, then actually it seriously is better to be unarmed. You can run better. I mean, you've got the ability to move more, not having an object blocking your way and acting as a bar. You've got the fact that you've got your hands free to grapple with anything, do whatever you want, do your, again, throws and disarms and things like that, or just, move furniture and things over, not block the way, of a filing cabinet or whatever, and just run out of there, close the door on someone. You can do all those things unarmed, whereas with an axe, it actually makes you worse, because you've got both your hands, or maybe one hand, occupied, instead of actually being able to freely move about. Plus with an extra 4 pounds of weight swinging about on its head, you also are significantly slowed down, not just in attacking, but actually in even doing things like moving around, trying to dodge, escape. If you think, whoa, 17 of them, get out of there, it's worse with an axe. So you can probably guess what I'm going to say with this. In summary, really, really, really don't use an axe unless you are incredibly strong. If you are, tell me in the comments below. Maybe I'll congratulate you. Well done! You're like Nick Ramos, the sort of person who thinks the sledgehammer is a nice lightweight practice weapon. But until then, see you later.